How's it going, Andrew?
What's going on, Matt?
Not much. Working out. Getting there. Getting nervous. Time is short.
Do we want to tell? Am I allowed to tell our viewers about the award you received recently, or is that a secret?
Oh, yeah, no, you can tell that.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to introduce Matt, the newest Mason of the Year for 2026 in District 12. Where's my sounds?
Hey. No, that was really cool. I had no clue I was nominated, so that was nice.
So congratulations.
Thanks.
Send your virtual pats to Matt's back. He's worked really, really hard. I don't think he sleeps. I don't know when he finds time to eat. I don't know how his wife is putting up with him, but he's living and breathing Masonry in a very cool way in our district. So thanks a lot, bud, for all that you do, Mr. Mason of the Year, District 12, 2026.
Thank you. Olivia's a saint. I don't sleep as much as I should, and it used to be energy drinks, but not anymore because I got off that train, except for one a day.
It's now Jack Daniel Blackberry, our unofficial sponsor.
Actually, I've been drinking a lot less of that too. I've been running and dieting and feeling better about life, trying to get ready for what's going to be a long year ahead.
Humble brag much. All right, so
Hey-oh.
I was bragging.
I gotta brag
for
every
you.
now and then.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. So what else has been going on?
I've been worried about my flowers that have thankfully survived all the frost warnings we've had.
Oh, dude,
That got sketchy for a minute. Drop $200 on plants and go, oh no.
Dude, I know the feeling. Welcome back to Time for Gardening with Matt and Andrew, brought to you by Teddy Wedger's, a local pasty shop in Madison. If you're in Madison area, please stop by and have a pasty. So, yeah, I've been in a similar situation where I keep patrolling my yard and staring at them very closely, being like, y'all alive, little fellas? And they somehow still are. So native plants are tough, so hopeful that they fight it out with, and eventually maybe we'll get spring here for once in our lives.
Yeah, for sure. That would be nice. But let's not keep our guests waiting, and let's kick off that music and get this thing started.
On it.
Loosen up your ties and roll up your sleeves. It's time for Fellowship with Matt and Andrew. The views and opinions expressed on this podcast are not necessarily the views and opinions of the Grand Lodge of Wisconsin or any other Grand Lodge or any appended body.
All right.
All right, awesome. So we have two very special guests today. I will introduce the first one, who our visitors should recognize, and I'll let him introduce our second guest. So one of our guests today is Ryan Thiele, that everybody has heard on this podcast almost as much as his dad. I think you might be our second most minuted guest on the show. How you doing, Ryan?
I'm good. How are you, Matt?
Yeah, hanging in there. And then with you tonight, you have...
I have Worshipful Brother Eric Pantano, the District 7 lecturer out here in Madison and the surrounding area.
Hello.
Perfect. Welcome, Eric. So, let's start this thing off right. Eric, how long have you been a Freemason? Why'd you join Freemasonry? What kept you coming back?
All good questions. I was raised on August 3rd, 2010. So I actually arrived in Masonry very late in my life. I was 40 at the time. So I'm going on 16 years this year. Wish I had found it 20 years before that, but that's not the way it worked out. So I originally got involved because I was looking for a place to find people who thought the same way that I did, who were like-minded. I've always been very much about improving myself and helping to improve the people around me as much as I could possibly do that. So that's what drew me to it initially. What keeps me in it, honestly, and what I'm very blessed to be the district lecturer in 7 is the ritual. I am a ritual guy. I've always been. From the time I was very young, I gravitated to all sorts of rituals, whether they be in organized religion or in the martial arts, which I've been studying since I was 13. Ritual is something I love. I love digging into it and really trying to understand the symbolism, the messages, and holy mackerel, the ritual that we have here in Masonry is I feel like every day I learn something new, and I've just only scratched the surface, and I've been really looking at this stuff deeply for a long time. And I feel like there's so much more, which is exciting, but also I can't figure out where the end is. There really is no end. I keep finding out new things. So that's what keeps me doing it.
Right on. That is some solid answers right there. What did you say?
Sorry, I got a 2-year-old screaming at the top of his lungs, specifically my name over and over. So I'm trying to keep myself on mute as much as possible, not to interrupt the mic. But quick follow-up on that. So I also, Eric, love the ritual. And I, in school, got my degree in anthropology, so I've always been fascinated by that stuff. Also, longtime martial artist. I stopped now that my body broke and it was too expensive. But for many, many years, I was as well. So I definitely get it. I always like to say that for me, the ritual feels like the allegory we use for chalk, that the lightest touch every time something else sticks to me. And, and I think there's something powerful about that. And I think this is going to directly relate into the topic we came here to talk about in a second here. But what do you think it is about ritual that makes it so transformative for people?
I think it comes down to the authors of our ritual took some really deep personal and interpersonal lessons and codified them in what now is somewhat archaic language, but at the time was the common parlance of the day. They were able to take volumes of lessons and put them into just a few lines. And the more you dig into that, as we hear, that they reveal their beauties to the candid and industrious inquirer. It's all there. All you have to do is dig into it. And when you do, you can't help but be transformed. It is a transforming principle, unlike anything that I can think of. Well, chemistry, which is what I teach. So there's a lot of transformation in chemistry, but this is a different kind of transformation. So I think that's what keeps people interested and invested in it, is that there's so much to learn just in how you read it, how it's delivered, and where it sits in each of the ceremonies.
It kind of reminds me, we were saying there was a quote that I read the other day, and I was trying to quickly look it up, that a guy described ritual is poetry in the world of acts. So it's, the goal of poetry is to oftentimes take something complex and distill it down into its smallest parts. And when you look at Masonic ritual, that's exactly what you're talking about there. They take, very complicated virtue ethics, and they just go, how do I just shove this into a digestible piece, shove it in their brain and go, I hope this seed takes root, and I think that's what makes ritual so compelling to come back to over and over again.
Totally agree.
Awesome. Well, since we're on the topic of ritual, which one of you wants to open this up for why we have you here tonight? What do you got going on? I see you scheming over there, Ryan. Go ahead.
Well, the last time that I was on, it was I think spring of 2025, right? I think Dewey and I were on. We were at the Dairyland ritual tournament from Wisconsin DeMolay, and that was a great time. And it was awesome to have Dewey on and to hear his perspective, because at the time he was an active DeMolay. Now he's a member of my lodge. And today, Eric and I are talking to the two of you about, we're going to convert that DeMolay tournament into one for the craft. So we're going to take the DeMolay, Wisconsin DeMolay's ritual tournament system, Dairyland, and we're modifying it for Masonic use. And we're going to host a tournament this fall here in Madison for the District 7 lodges. So we're keeping it a little, within appropriate scale so that we don't, I think, bite off a little more than we can chew. It's one thing to have the tournament for a bunch of young men, usually teenagers, right? And the DeMolay ritual is much, much smaller and much more simple compared to ours. And so it's something that we've been working on, Eric and I, for many months now. And the idea first came up in a coffee shop last late summer or sometime in the summer, I think.
I think that's
yeah.
right.
Eric tells the story a little bit better than I do when we go and tell lodges about how this kind of came about. But it's something that we've been working on for quite a long time, and that we're super excited about because of the two of you know, having been judges for Dairyland for so long. It's a really unique opportunity for DeMolay, and now hopefully for Freemasons to engage with the ritual in a very unique way. Sport, fun, Yeah. I'm psyched. I'm kind of bouncing around over here right now, just thinking about it.
So it's being beta tested in District 7 as the first go at it.
Beta tested is a pretty good way of putting it. Yeah. Because we've modified quite a bit, to adapt for our work here, our secret work, but a lot will remain the same. The whole structure remains the same about how we categorize competitions or split up the ritual. Heavy emphasis on individual participation, not just lodges and teams and things like that.
So for our listeners who may not have listened to the Dairyland episode, may not be familiar with this tournament, can you break it down a little bit just to explain kind of what this is, how it's structured in a way that can make it such a good competition?
Yeah. Back in 2022, Wisconsin DMLA restarted their ritual tournaments. It was using an old book, or handbook, I should say, that was a regional one. That did give it some excitement that you were competing under the same rules as DMLA in Illinois or Indiana or Michigan, whatever it may be. But we brought it back after the pandemic. I don't know if you guys know, there was a global pandemic, right, that happened and kind of shut everything down. And so it's very hard to kind of pick it back up, especially when DMLA took a membership hit. And so now we're trying to get members engaged with the ritual again. And it was part of a whole long project of trying to reteach. I don't know, that's probably not proper grammar, but teach again the ritual or the beauty of it. It didn't go well. That 2022 tournament did not go well. I realized as an adult that the rules that I had once competed under were not, I think, very applicable to today's generation of young men. And so I went about creating a whole new system, and that's where Dairyland comes up. It is so when we say a ritual tournament, I would look at it actually like you would the Olympics, seeing as how we're hosting the Olympics in a couple of years, which will be fun. Every individual, in this case, District 7 Freemasons, will be able to register for different competitions. And a lot of it may seem pretty straightforward. Say the stair lecture or Master Mason charge. And you get to compete against your fellow brothers. The hardest part is always competing against yourself. And to really kind of put it in layman's terms, whoever has the highest score wins. But we're doing that on a huge scale, right? So, we're talking about dozens of different competitions, expanding all 3 degrees. There's team competitions for whole lodges to work together and get involved with. And really, that's kind of it. And its most simplest form, there's the cliff notes, because I know I have a tendency to just kind of ramble. So, and Matt made fun of me last time I was on, saying I just kept talking and talking. So, I don't want to get bullied this time.
Well, usually it's you and Andrew that I can't get to stop engaging with each other and let me have a word in edgewise. But in this particular case, I have a vested interest in this because I think this is a wonderful idea. And I have been talking about wanting a ritual tournament for quite a while for Wisconsin Freemasonry and seeing it expand. Obviously, starting it in a district is a great spot to start it. But from what I understand, there used to be one. It went away for whatever reason. And Eric's nodding his head. I'm guessing you know a little bit more about the history of this, so I'm going to let you go ahead.
I do know a little bit about it. When I was first raised, at the time, there was a statewide degree competition, I believe is what it was called, where each lodge that wished to compete, each year it would be a different degree. You would put together a team from your lodge with all the appropriate officers, go to wherever the tournament was going to be happening. Sometimes it was in Oshkosh. It was usually in a location that had a larger Masonic center that could host. And I went to it early on, the first or second year, just to watch. I knew very little ritual at the time. I had just been raised. I fell in love with the idea. I thought it was fantastic to get up there and really show your proficiency in a particular part of the ritual. Over the next couple of years, it started to dwindle. It went from lodges sending teams to districts sending a team that was pulled from the different lodges in that district, and then it disappeared. And this was even before the pandemic. It was gone already. And I was a little disappointed because I was all excited. By the time it had gone, I had learned a bunch of ritual and I thought I was doing it pretty well. I was interested in testing myself out with that. And then there was no longer an option to do that. So from that point on, I felt very much like I wanted to find a way that we could bring that back in some way. It was something that was always, it never escaped my mind. I don't know all of the specifics about why it ended up going. I've heard rumors, I've heard stories of people complaining about this and that, saying it wasn't as fair as it could have been or whatever. I don't really put a whole lot of stock into that. What I do focus on is we really need that to kind of light a fire under folks to dig into the ritual and to really raise the level of ritual performance in our district and then ultimately in the state. I think Ryan and I share a grand dream that someday this will become a state competition again. That's what I would love to see happen. So yeah, we used to have one. From what I understood, well, from the one time I watched and from what I understand from people who competed, it was a lot of fun. It was a great fellowship opportunity as well as raising the ritual to a new level. And then it was gone. And so now it's starting to come back again.
One thing that...
Well, and I think...
go ahead, Matt.
I think the addition of like some individual competitions versus it being solely a team competition is going to be very helpful in engaging people and participating, because
Absolutely.
Maybe their lodge can't put together an entire team right now, but they got a couple guys that want to compete, and then those couple guys are going to start pushing the lodge to eventually be able to field the team, right?
That's the hope.
There's definitely room for there's room for growth and dynamic, friendly competition going on here. So
I was gonna say the exact same thing. Is that what the beauty of the way the Dairyland was set up was that, like you were saying, Eric, it was harder and harder for lodges to field teams. So the district's sending a team, right? And at that point, you might as well have had individuals because it you know what I mean? Like that's how hard it is to get a team together sometimes. And I think we've all been through that moment when you have a bunch of degree work coming up and you're trying to frantically get your team together and someone's on holiday and someone, slips and has a hernia. And that's a true story that happened to me. And then, whatever the issue is, and you're scrambling to get your team together, that by having individual play, I think it's very fascinating to me because you could almost set it up with the individual tournament and then like the big show, if it ever got big enough to do full teams and be like, well, and now this is the team competitions. And you think about, when you're looking at, if we're using the Olympics as a reference, there's some individual events and then there are some team events, and the sky's the limit. And I do agree that not only have I been desirous of seeing this come back into Wisconsin Freemasonry for the purpose of competing, I also like the idea that by watching so many different talented ritualists, like you were saying, Eric, with increasing the quality of the ritual, there's more than just memorization to quality. And when you're in the Dairyland, there is points given for performance. Are you performing well? Seeing more performers can help inspire you. I mean, I think we can all think of a ritualist that we've seen do a part and you're like, oh, I really like how he does that. And then you go, yoink, and you put it in your pocket. You're like, I'm going to borrow some of that energy for mine. And that kind of cross-pollinating can be, such a help to the craft.
One of the things I stress in my schools of instruction whenever I visit a lodge to talk about ritual is that learning the words is absolutely crucial. That's how we perpetuate our ritual. That is mouth to ear. That's the way it works. And that's why it's still around, is because it's word perfect. But if you want a candidate in a degree to understand the lesson, it has to be given to him in such a way that he understands what you're saying with words that perhaps he's never used in his entire life. So the delivery side of this is a huge part of it. And it's already there because Ryan had it already there. So we're very lucky in that way that we're going to stress that part of it. It's one thing to give the lectures perfectly. It's another thing to say them, to speak them, and to feel them. So yeah, I agree.
And DMOI have been a great example of this. As we tried to, as Eric said, kind of light that fire under the youth again when it came to ritual, because that's what makes us stand out compared to other fraternal groups, right? All the time I hear from families who are interested in potentially joining DMOI, like, well, what's the difference between this and Boy Scouts, right? And so you have to find a very clever way to talk about, the ritual and our values and things like that. Well, the same goes for the craft, right? And, Yeah, the young men at DMLA proved that when you have a system like ours that rewards good performance, we're not going to penalize you. You already get penalized enough by so many guys walk out of a competition thinking, damn, I did not do a good job, right? And they know that they're not going to get a lot of those bonus points. But what's fantastic about that evaluation is, like you said, Andrew, you can go and learn from other folks, right? And see, ooh, I don't like the way that they did that, or versus, I did like that, I'm going to copy it. Our judges give feedback too. So if you didn't do too well, you're going to have a list of feedback on how to improve. Like, again, we don't want to penalize you for having a bad performance. Whereas the old DMLA tournament, the rules did penalize you. The performance points under Dairyland go from 0 to 5. Bonus points if you deliver well, like Eric said. But that old system had a scale. I think it was like -7 through +7, or -5 through +5. And so if you didn't do well, they would take even more points away, even though you're probably already going to be dropping words or whatever. That's not what we're doing. We want people to engage with this, to have fun, and to learn. When I was young and competing, some of the most, I think, they always say like you learn more from mistakes and failures and things like that. Watching friends or people that I even didn't like, like other DMLA that I was not cool with, going to watch their parts and be like, damn, all right, they kind of killed that. I need to copy that for myself, right? And then in the spirit of competition and sport, well, now many of them are my best friends. So, that's what this is all about. Yes, there's winners and there's losers, but we're trying to raise the floor too for what is good ritual. And that means reinforcing good habits and good performances. It also means hopefully breaking bad habits, right? If you've been doing the same part for a long time, and you get a lot of words wrong, but nobody's really corrected you, or nobody has helped you on your delivery, right? Like Eric said, there's so many guys that I've seen in my travels that do a lecture and they do a fairly good job at memorizing all the words, but their delivery makes me want to fall asleep. And it stinks because it's, like the stair lecture is my favorite out of all 3 degrees. I love that part. And I've seen great ones, and I've seen ones where I want it to be done, right? So hopefully we can raise the floor of ritual in the district. And yes, Eric and I do have a dream that this can expand outside of Madison and Dane County. But we'll see. We're starting a little small, and I think that's good for us.
Here's an interesting question.
No, I think
sorry.
These guys,
No,
you gotta
ahead,
have hand signals or something.
No, I just have a quick question.
We're usually not this bad.
Quick question. So with it being in District 7, so with the Dairyland, you had the option of saying, would you like to have an audience or no? Is that going to be maintained in this tournament, or is it going to be more spectator open? Because I felt like with the kids, it made sense because you're like, dude, some of these guys are 10. We don't need to shove a crowd to stare at a 10-year-old who's very, very nervous, right? But we're grown men.
Since many of them were on the spectrum too, right? So now you're just like overstimulating them.
Correct. And and even if someone's on the spectrum and they're in their 30s, oftentimes a 30-year-old on the spectrum is a little more well-adjusted to dealing with that type of stimulation. So it's kind of a different beast. Is it going to be more open to spectators, or is it going to still be optional to be shuffling people in and out if we wanted to have people observe?
It's a rule that we've been discussing because we want, part of this promotional tour that we've been doing across all the lodges in District 7, really pushing it hard. And we're very privileged to have an opportunity to speak with the two of you and your audience, but as well as at annual communication this upcoming year. So we've evaluated what kinds of rules are applicable for the craft versus, some of the young men. And we've been encouraging other districts. And that's part of the reason why we're going to annual communication, is to get the state hyped up for it, even if they themselves cannot participate. And so we want districts to come and attend and see the good work that District 7 is putting on, and hopefully keep that fire so that if it goes well, Eric and I can then hopefully have an established base to work with throughout the state, right? But as of right now, just to, try and maintain that consistency, only a few of the big rules, the structures have changed for the craft. So I think this fall we'll continue to have that rule in place. But, as the two of you know, many of the DMLA did not use that rule. They were fine with an audience. And I think some of them used it to their advantage. They would go and sit in on their whoever they were competing against, right? Maybe stress each other out, but the good ones would rise above it. And if you knew what the other kid was pulling, then okay, you can kick them out. So I think we'll keep that. But there's a lot of the rules and structures that we'll evaluate after the tournament, especially when we get feedback from staff and competitors and say, okay, what fit, what doesn't fit. For example, one of the things that we've already changed are in DMLA, we offered 2 championships. One that was more tailored for larger law chapters, and one for smaller chapters. This time we're keeping it down to 1 championship. Whoever has the most points at the end becomes the champion. But we're offering cups as well. These little other rewards that kind of fill the gaps between the championship and then the individual competitions. Things like Rookie of the Year versus we have another one that we're going to offer called the Mastery Cup, the lodge that has the highest percentage of points earned. So that kind of takes the place of the Proficiency Championship that was available to the young men. So those are like the big examples of things that we're changing for the craft. But there are some other ones that we're maintaining just for now. Like we actually had a question recently about attire. So one of the rules for the performance evaluation, one of the categories is, are they wearing appropriate formal attire that we applied for the youth? Well, for us, that's going to be, a suit and an apron, right? So, we're keeping something like that, even though that may not be as applicable to adults as it would be to a kid, but we'll evaluate that over time.
But if you think about it, by requiring a dress code, it makes an even playing field. So someone's not getting subconsciously docked points because he's in overalls when his performance was top tier, because someone subconsciously didn't like that. It creates an even playing field. But to circle back, the only reason I'm selfishly asking about the audience piece, it's twofold. One, it's because as a guy who's had to do conferral for the first time, when suddenly 50 visitors want to show up to my degree, including Grand Lodge people, and had to sit there and go, what is happening right now? And you have to go through it. I do think being able to perform in front of an audience is a very key skill within adults in Masonry, whereas in DMLA, for reasons we have previously explained, it makes complete sense to make it optional based on that platform that you're working with. 100% I agree that there. The second part is selfishly, I think it'd be really cool to, be able to go and watch these tournaments. I think you'd be surprised with the amount of attendees you would get from people not only in 7, but in neighboring districts who just want to sit and watch Ritual all day. I think you'd find that it would be a big draw for you to helping promote the tournament too. Because let's say you have, 70 people who want to come and watch, and every person walks in and they go, would you like an audience? They're like, no. And 70 people come filing out, and then they come filing back in. They come filing out. Then it makes it seem like it's a tournament just for the people who are competing, but then that kind of limits who can be transformed by watching people perform high-level ritual too. I think just something to consider as with dealing with people within the craft compared to the youth group.
I would agree with that, in that those parts, regardless of what the part is, are never done in isolation. They're always done with other people there. That's a fair question. I think it's a good one to consider. Obviously, we do want people to attend, even if they're not in District 7, to see what we're up to if our dream is to expand this. So these are, we're not dropping the official rule set until annual communication next month. So these are questions that we are very much looking for people to ask us, so that because there are going to be things that, our two minds, as amazing as they are going to miss some things. So it's good that we're being asked these questions. And I think those are things for us to consider and continue to talk about.
You should also
got to give us the opportunity to come. You got to give us the opportunity to come scout our competition, right, for the years to come. when this eventually turns into a District 12 has their own, and then whoever wins District 12 goes on to take on the winners from the other districts, or however it ends up getting formatted when it gets to a state level.
Yeah, I gotta say the hardest part about preparing for this tournament here is it's not even like adapting the rules. Like Eric said, we've been communicating to lodges that part of our journey here in meeting with all the lodges in the district. We're hitting almost every lodge in our district this month. We're missing just one, just couldn't figure it out in the schedule. We're promoting this. We're also soliciting that feedback too. And the hardest part for Eric and I, though, is the fact that we can't compete. We lead these men to a treasure that we cannot possess. Like, I have been itching to compete again, running the DMLA tournaments. I loved putting in the scores and seeing the competition between the young men. And I just couldn't help but think, like, man, I wish I had this when I was 16. And now that I'm 26 and Eric and I are putting this on, it's like, dang, I wish I could help represent my lodge, but
Me
heavy is the head
sitting
that
here
wears the crown.
30 years older than that.
Right.
Just do a head-to-head, a quick at the end with the judges, where you and Eric compete over the same part, and the judges get judged, and it's a separate competition within the competition, best director or whatever you want to call it.
I had a question.
I'll even let Ryan pick the part.
Oh, dang, dude. All right. Guess what? We're picking the smallest one. So then every word really matters.
Seafaring man it is.
I was thinking chaplain, even smaller, right? Yeah, no, we've just gotten a lot of great feedback from the lodges so far, and they're very interested in this and excited that this is something that they can do, rally the lodge around, right? Especially because I know the two of you talk a lot on this podcast about lodge culture and its importance, right? Well, this is one thing to really rally the troops around is, hey guys, we got a tournament coming up in 5 months. It's time to start locking in here and practicing and so forth, which they, in a perfect world, right, they should already be doing for degrees and things like that, right? But every lodge's situation is different. Every lodge's culture is different. Hopefully something like this can be fairly applied, right, to every lodge, something that they can all kind of hop on board to, especially because of how standardized it is. We've been emphasizing that every man, every lodge that competes will be evaluated fairly on their own merit. We have standardized judging practices, guidelines, marks, as the two of you know. That was a big thing that I pushed this spring for DMLA. We're keeping all of that for the Masonic tournament.
Well, and think about this, Ryan. What's the biggest excuse you'll hear from a lodge whose ritual is subpar? I haven't had a candidate in such a long time. We've had no reason to practice. So now suddenly we have someone coming in and now we're scrambling. Having the ritual tournament is another opportunity to say, hey guys, I know we haven't had a candidate, but you know what? We have a reason to practice because we have this tournament coming up. And while we wait for that guy to come knocking on the door, we're going to go kick some people's butt in this tournament. And
I'll even
boom.
extend it a little bit. If what we do as Masons is make new Masons, and we do that through the ritual, then we can, this converts to membership. This is something that people will come in and experience a fantastic ritual. I was very lucky when I was initiated, passed, and raised. The guys that did my degrees were extremely good at ritual and really good at delivering the lessons. And I don't know how it would have been had it been sort of a lackluster degree. I don't really know, because I don't know how I would have reacted to that. And being as focused on ritual as I am, that may have been a turnoff. How can you turn your nose up at, like, this is an opportunity to get better at the work we do on a regular basis? I mean, yeah, business meetings are important and everything, but our degree, our ritual that's our work. That is our labor, and we want to get better at it.
Yeah, and there's something so exciting about, a candidate, you having a lodge being able to rally together and help a candidate, right, work through the degrees. I mean, we say in the charges that, go learn from your learned brethren sitting right behind you or whatever, right? And it's, as the two of you know, right, or Eric too, Eric's been a great help at Middleton Lodge as we rebuild the lodge. We've got a lot of guys coming in. I swear half the lodge, their Masonic age is under 4 years on average. It's a very young lodge. And so our ritual is a little rusty, myself included, but we're getting better and better. We just had a brother post last night, and how awesome was it, this feeling that we could just do his right away at the end of the month, because we've been practicing. And yeah, there's still outside help that we need to bring in, But it makes us very proud of our work. And I know that there are plenty of other lodges that feel the exact same way, especially the ones that we've been visiting on our travels, promoting the tournament. They see this as just an extension, either a new opportunity for them to learn and work together, or it's an extension of the good work that they're already doing.
I have a kind of slightly off topic question, just out of curiosity as to whether you guys have thought about it at all as far as like rules go on this. Do you have to compete for your mother lodge, or can you compete for a lodge you are a plural in? What have we, because I mean, I'm just thinking about, guys being able to kind of stack the deck if all the best ritualists pluraled into the same lodge, and then all of a sudden they just crank out an all-star team, right? I'm not saying anybody would do that, but
well, now they will that you told them, Matt.
Yeah, great. Now they're going to assemble the Avengers. Thanks, Matt.
I have a feeling that most of the competitions are going to be the individual side. And that's just through conversations I've been having with brothers in the 3 lodges I belong to. They're very excited because they have a particular part that they've been working on, that they always do at degrees. They really want to shine with that part. So I have a feeling that that's going to predominate anyway. I don't know what kind of participation we'll get with the lodge team stuff. The team stuff that we're doing, a lot of it is abbreviated. It doesn't require all the parts at this point, except perhaps for the openings and first sections. But there are some team competitions that are 4 guys in very specific places. So I think it's going to, that's a question we should think of. If I'm thinking about it in terms of this idea of a mastery cup, you could have somebody who's performing for all of the lodges they are pluraled with, and those lodges will benefit from that individual's participation in a particular degree. So in that case, it might have an effect. But I think, and this is something that I think we'll talk about some more, but I don't see why we should limit it. My mother lodge, for example, may not compete at all as a team, but I know 2 of the lodges that I'm pluraled at are absolutely going to be thinking about that because they've got strong teams. Now, I can't compete, but if I could, I would jump in on whoever wanted me to help them out. I mean, we're all trying to build a ritual and get it better across our district and ultimately across the state. So that is something we'll certainly talk about.
We have some anecdotes or some examples from DMLA where you had young men moving to a different chapter and competing under that chapter. It wasn't for to, I guess, try to cheat the system and get, stack the deck in one chapter over another. It was usually just life circumstances, right? I'll take John Stewart as an example. We talked about him the last time I was on. He won the DMLA tournament 3 years in a row by having the most points. All 3 of his championships are with 3 different chapters. Yeah, it's so it makes it hard for me to put together the rule book, because it would be so much easier if I could just say John Stewart Brookfield. But now I have to split up all of his wins because they're, allocated to different chapters. And it wasn't for a sporting reason, because if it was, he would have just stuck with his home mother chapter that's won half the championships in our history. He could have just stayed there and kept stacking the deck with some of the other great ritualists that are there.
It would make sense, I think, that if somebody is in multiple chapters, that they wouldn't be able to compete in the same team competition for multiple chapters. You could do one, right? Mm-hmm. But if there's another competition that somebody's doing, and you wanted to jump in on that one, but I think it'd be weird to be competing against yourself.
Yeah. Well, I think if you make the argument that, say, somebody's going to play senior deacon in 2 different lodges. Say 2 different lodges are going to compete in the fellowcraft conferral, the first section, and he's going to play senior deacon in both lodges. Well, by that logic, couldn't you say that he could then do the same part twice in an individual competition under 2 different lodges? So I think that it gets into this murky water of representation. And Eric actually brought up a great example when it came to the Mastery Cup, when we evaluate who has the highest percentage of points earned. Is that really a good evaluation of a lodge's ritual performance if it comes down to one guy kind of influencing the points so much? Which on one hand, is a representation of a lodge's strength, right? You have a really fantastic ritualist that's a part of your lodge. That's awesome, right? But if, he's doing it for 4, 5, 6 different lodges, well, now it kind of dilutes the evaluation of that lodge's performance, And that was why I told John Stewart, like, if you're going to compete in the DMOA tournament, you have to pick a chapter, dude. I can't have you doing both. And so maybe we would run into a similar position. The way that we currently are evaluating or putting together our registration is you have to tell us what lodge you are representing. But that is a good question, because what about smaller lodges? I know it's not uncommon for smaller lodges to have a lot of plural members, that they bring in guys to try and help jumpstart the lodge again. I know, like, it happens. So are we giving them a fair shot by not allowing that? Or are we maybe doing a little bit more harm when it comes to what are we getting out of this?
I think
that's a great question, Matt.
I think where you're getting convoluted on this too is the idea that the Mastery Cup, or whatever you're calling it, which I assume is similar to how you did it in the DMOA tournament, where they take let's say in this example, if you have individual competition and small group competition, you'd calculate, those would be 2 separate competition paths, right? I assume, like, the group play, individual play, here's the winners, and then the Mastery Cup. The Mastery Cup to me feels like the House Cup in Harry Potter, where it's like, it's pretty sweet, but the individual play is really why people are there. That's just kind of like a incentivizer for lodges to cultivate more people to come with them to more or less grow the tournament, right? So I think where the advantage is, I don't think you're saying, hey, this is the most masterful lodge at Ritual. You're saying this is the most strongly rated lodge who showed up to this competition today. And when you're talking about these smaller lodges and stuff like that, that's always going to be something that you're going to have to deal with, right? Like, if you send 50 mediocre ritualists and then a lodge sends 2 phenomenal ones, well, unfortunately, there is going to be a bit of a disparity because they're being rewarded for participation on top of skill. And so, I don't think there's anything wrong with that, because the Masters Cup is not going to be the reason they're there. That's just a fun mini game within the game itself, right?
That's not a bad way of putting it. a mini game. And it is. It's a way for us to reward all different kinds of lodge situations, right? And, that's why we have Rookie of the Year, because we want to incentivize or reward newer Master Masons, not just for, hey, thanks for, doing the tournament for the first time. It's, oh, you just got raised, 2 years ago or a year ago. And we want to, and you did a good job at the tournament too, right? It's not just a participation trophy. And the other side quest, the Mastery Cup, is if you break it down on how to achieve that, it would actually favor smaller lodges, because the less amount of competitions that you register for, the more valuable each individual point. So when you achieve it, right, the less words that you forget or make an error of, those points are going to be much more valuable compared to, say, the largest lodge in the district that's fielding 15, 20 guys. And we're talking tens of thousands of points here, right? Getting one word wrong is not going to mean that much in the aggregate, but on the small side, that one word in one competition is going to have a huge impact. So smaller lodges will be able then to kind of game the system and fight hard to walk away with a win. Everybody will have a chance, and that's kind of what we're going for.
I love it. I love it so much.
I do too. I'm super stoked. I cannot wait to see how this plays out and where it goes from here. I think this is really gonna start getting some gears churning around the state once more people hear about it. And I think that the format you came up with for Dairyland, Ryan, was just a great stepping stone to use right away to get this started. Obviously, it's probably going to need some refinement. It's not going to be able to look exactly like the DMLA structure, but it's a great starting point, right? You already had a structure in place from which to build and figure it out, which is better than most. I mean, I'm trying to build a barbecue competition in District 12 from the ground up and trying to figure that out. So that's been at least you had someplace to a good foundation to start with.
Yeah, and I'm such a perfectionist that every year I would solicit feedback and I would agonize over, different ways that I can refine and improve Dairyland. And my friends would be like, dude, it's October. The tournament's not for 6-7 months. Relax. And then the same goes here, right? That Eric and I have taken a lot of time to think about, what's how can we put together the best product for the lodges in our district? Because we have this vision of, if this tournament goes well, that we'd like to see it institutionalized and spread across the state. But that's going to be hard because you want to maintain quality. For example, it would be very hard for me to jump on board with expanding the tournament to other districts or to other regions of the state if I couldn't confidently say that our judging standards would be maintained, right? Like that, having that integrity, that fairness that's built into the tournament that has plagued past tournaments, like that's so important, because without legitimacy that comes from our brothers, that the legitimacy they give the tournament, it's just going to go away again. But this is something that Eric and I want to, we want this to stay forever. Like I'm already thinking about, okay, well, what happens if I can't run it? And so the scoring model that we have is almost completely automated. I'm designing it in a way that anybody could pick it up and use it, right? Which will help in the future for scale if we can grow it. But we'd love to see it grow. We'd love to see it go really, really well this fall, where everybody's like, man, we gotta make this a thing, right? But we're being cautious. And it's why a lot of as an example, we're not going to offer the Master Mason second section as a competition. And that one was tough because, we have a lot of great guys in the district that can do all different kinds of parts. And it would be so fun to see lodges compete in that. But we just can't, we're not confident that we'd be able to fairly evaluate that competition. The floor work, right? The signs that are required, all the moving parts and the players in the competition. So we really want to get our feet under us with openings and conferrals when it comes to the team competitions. And then we can kind of build from there, especially when, as the two of you know from DMLA, a lot of the team competitions at DMLA were not full chapters. It was like 2 or 3 guys doing a very, unique collection of parts. We thought about offering something like that too for this fall. Took it out because we want to, selfishly, then we can, add it in the future and say, hey, look, new competition, right? On the other hand, all right, let's make it as easy as possible for Eric and I to actually build the tournament while still offering, a good selection of competitions for the crowd.
And you don't
Here's
need
another.
Yep, go ahead.
Thanks. Here's another caveat that I was just thinking about as you were talking about the floor work in the second section of Master Mason. At that point, you're going to have to start getting, if that's something you wanted to add into the competition down the road, right? You're going to have to start getting buy-in from judges to take the time to study and be familiar with the floor work and stuff themselves to make them better judges at the competition. You have to have judges that are prepared and understand what it should look like as well.
Absolutely. In speaking with our current Grand Lecturer, Moses Adams, he made that comment as well, that I believe the way he phrased it was, I would hope that the judges are ritualists or proficiency men. I don't know that that's a realistic goal at this point for the first one to hit, but I understood what he was saying, which is essentially what you just described, or that part especially. You would need, because of how widespread it is, without getting into too many, any of the details, because of how widespread that is throughout the lodge room, you would need multiple movement judges spaced around the room to really catch everything that happens. And they're all going to have to know that part really, really well, exactly what the movements are. So yeah, they're going to have to study a little bit. I think there's going to be a little bit of that anyway, or whoever the judges are. They're going to need to be very familiar with, if there is a part that includes movement or handling of paraphernalia or any of that stuff, they're going to have to be very familiar with what the ritual specifically says for those parts. It's going to be easier, I think, if you're a word judge to just follow along and cross things out or make your marks. But if you're a movement judge, you have to watch what's happening, and then figure out you'll have to quickly get it, or you have to remember it. That's a tall order for that second section. So yeah, that's one of the reasons I think that we thought it's a lot right now. We want to see how this works on a smaller scale within our district before we start adding things that are, honestly, I agree with Ryan, more fun. They're more fun. Like that second section is my favorite part of our ritual. And I really want to see it done well. I want to see it done well. I want to see it judged well. So we'll work our way up to that for sure.
Well, and think about this, 2 comments. One, having those level of mastery on floor judges, think about what that could put back into the craft. If they're sitting there staring at the back of the book where you see the floor plan and they're going, this sucks, and they're going, this is hard, they might be like, you know what, I think I would do it like this, and to make it more easy for them as judges to see it. And then that could filter up to jurisprudence and to esoteric committee to say, hey guys, I think after judging 10 of these, I think we could improve this chart a little bit. Make it clear.
Absolutely.
So there's that front. And the other fun thing that I think, which I hope from gathering from context clues, is that each tournament could potentially have different parts that you're selecting for people to compete in, so that it's not every time it's the same 5 parts that you're doing. When it moves around, I think that's a crazy thing, is like, ooh, you know what, I love doing this last year, and you know what, I've never done that part, but I'm going to start studying now because I want to try that for this tournament. I think that also helps increase the breadth of people's knowledge as they compete in other categories. Otherwise, if it's the same every year, the same guy's going to compete in the same category and say, well, this is all I know, and so I'm just going to keep competing in this. By creating that diversity of like, this year, this is what the competition's events are, it forces those skilled ritualists to go, well, maybe I need to get out of my comfort zone, try something else, because I like to compete, you know? I can't just do third base every time or whatever you want to do.
Right.
Well, it's kind of like the Olympics, right? You know, you got the same sports every year, right? You know, at the Summer Olympics, there's going to be a javelin throw. But this year, now we have, what is it? I think we have flag football.
Yep.
Right. So, you know, that was actually something that we did at DMLA over the last 2 years. We created a new part. I had not seen anywhere else at some of the DMLA tournaments across the country. So I think we were the first to do it. And if not, then, well, I don't care. It doesn't fit my headcanon. So we took the chaplain part, and there's the closing prayer. It's called the 9 o'clock interpolation. And it's one that DMLA here at every meeting, at almost every event where business is done. Many of them could, even if they're not ritualists, can probably recite half of it just off rip. But what we noticed is that people weren't really doing the chaplain part itself, and which for DMLA included the opening prayer, the 9 o'clock prayer, and then a closing prayer. That was the ritual competition, or that was the chaplain competition, I should say. We took that 9 o'clock prayer out and made it its own competition in the elementary category, so the easiest category. The idea being, this prayer that you hear all the time, compete in it. And if you know one prayer, you can quickly learn the opening and the closing. And the goal was to incentivize people to learn the entire chaplain part. And it was starting to work. We were seeing young men sign up for 9 o'clock and chaplain. They were double dipping, but that's okay. That's how it's designed. So you can do that. And so I think there's a little bit of that can be done at the tournament. There's a lot of, I don't want to call them assets or anything like that, but like there's a lot of things that you can pull from the tournament that isn't just who's the winner and who isn't the winner, right? Like, how many times do district lecturers mention, that come into the role, or district deputies and their teams come in and think, wow, I wish I had a list of who knows what part in the district, right? Yeah, Eric's raising his hand, right? Well,
Eric, we're working on something. Andrew and I are working on something to hopefully ease that burden. I'll loop you in on it offline.
I need to work on that again.
Well, one way you could do it is with the tournament registrations, you have this self-updating list of who knows what, and not just the winners, right? But who knows what parts in the district. As the two of you know, I'm a numbers geek, so I pull statistics on the tournament all the time. I can pull word averages and performance averages. I can tell you the lowest and the highest competitions, room for improvement, things we're doing well. You know, that I think gets back to what you were kind of talking about, Andrew, of the tournament can tell us what we're doing right and what we're doing wrong. The numbers can show us that, but then the feedback, the actual like quantitative work, or is it qualitative? I always get the two mixed up. I have 2 degrees and I don't know what they mean. So I think those will be incredibly helpful for district operations, potentially Grand Lodge operations. We didn't design this tournament to influence ritual, right? Like if you want to talk about ritual and the esoterics, there's plenty of education out there, that can scratch that itch. This is primarily for sport, but I'd be lying if I said that there isn't some incidental impact on those kinds of discussions that come from the tournament, especially when you get the numbers involved. I was able to mathematically prove that the DMLA were improving year after year after year. And I can narrow down on an individual level, on a chapter level, on a competition level, right? Those, I think, are the really cool impacts that can come from the tournament that isn't just, those are like the unknowns that people don't really think about. And that's okay. Not everybody's like an administrator, let alone running the tournament, right? So that's the stuff I find exciting.
Your second and third order effects, basically. Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you're someone in District 7, or you're someone just interested in staying in the loop on this tournament, the upcoming info, how to compete, how to watch as this develops into the fall, how do people keep in the loop on this kind of stuff? How do they reach out if they're interested?
Yeah, well, right off the bat, we'll be reaching out to them. So they'll be seeing Eric and I's mugs all month as we visit almost every lodge, but we will hit every lodge by the middle of June. And we give our contact informations out there. And it's probably easiest to go through Eric because of his district lecturer email, and many people have his contact information, right? So if people have questions on the competitions themselves, like what am I supposed to work on? Pure work questions, right? Eric's your man. And I think this is where Eric and I are a really good tag team, because he has this huge breadth of knowledge when it comes to the ritual, and I have the structure that can utilize that, right? For me, if there's questions on the rules and the regulations or the strategy, I was helping out DMLA chapters and individuals all the time, DMLA, on how do I maximize my performance? I don't want to go for a championship. I want to do this. Okay, let me help you. Or I do want to go for a championship. What's the best chance realistically? So those kinds of questions, logistics, rules, strategy can come to me. But dl7@wimasons.org, I think, would be the primary one to reach out to. It's our lecturer's email.
Mm-hmm. Perfect. So I think probably the clearest way to say it is keep an eye out on your district info. I'm sure it's going to be coming out on the district info. If it's not going to be going into the Masonic Journal, I'm sure it is probably.
Yep.
So keep an eye on your Masonic Journal for more info coming up on this great ritual event. If you're in
Groupable.
And Groupable.
We'll have it on Groupable too.
Yep. And if you're not using Groupable, please do. It makes our lives easier. And yeah, keep your eyes out. And if you're in District 7 and you got a ritual in your heart, start polishing it and get ready, because this fall is going to be lit. And I'm hoping that I can sneak and watch, even if it's only, if I'm not allowed, I might just sneak in. I know some secret passageways, so I'll sneak in somehow.
Yeah, you'll be in my
back
reserves
hallways
for staff.
Fair enough.
But before we completely wrap this up, we do have one question we have to ask Eric. Can't ask you it yet, Ryan. Sorry, you haven't made it there yet. So, Eric, we have a thing we do anytime we have a past master on the podcast. We ask them what their one piece of advice to a new or incoming worshipful master would be.
That's a great question. Just one? I could do this all day. Okay. The one that came immediately to mind when you were speaking is, when you are senior warden, you absolutely should be planning your calendar for the following year, because it's very unusual, unless your lodge is going through some strange shuffling, or we've had years, my mother lodge is Doric 356 in Madison. We've had years where, especially after the pandemic, people didn't feel like moving forward. So given that that's probably not an issue anymore, you're sitting in the West, be thinking about getting things. Paul Torville said it the best. You should every month be having some sort of fellowship night, some degree practice, some outreach to your community, and bring in guys who don't show up, reach out to them. So sitting in the West, I've been master twice. The first time I didn't get that memo, and I scrambled right as we were working up towards my first meeting in the East, I really scrambled to put a calendar together, and I did a pretty good job following it. The second time I was sitting in the East, that year before, I put my entire calendar together on that first meeting. I gave it to everybody. Every date was set. This is what we're doing. This is when we're doing it. Start putting it on your calendar now, because I think, our lives get busy. And if folks aren't aware that something is coming up and you don't have anything necessarily planned, they may make other plans. I say all the time, none of us joined Masonry to go to business meetings. That's not why we joined. And yet that seems to be a lot of what we're doing. And there should be other things. And I know there are a lot of lodges in our district and in other districts that I've been to that get that. And they're doing all of these things. They have a great calendar. So planning your calendar before you even sit in the master's chair is, I think, the best piece of advice I could give as a past master.
How can one work without designs on their trestle board?
Exactly.
100%. I totally agree with it. Yeah, I was definitely one of those people that had my calendar ready ahead of time, and I already have a calendar ready for the position that's coming up. So,
excellent.
I definitely think that is some of the most solid advice that can be given. So
I had mine ready like 4 months before, so it's okay.
That counts.
Even though Matt was on my case like quarter one, like, Andrew, work on your calendar. I'm like, I got it. Andrew, work on your calendar. You're like, I got it. 4 months before, I'm like, okay, I got it. Now it's done.
Then you got to throw in, if you really want to get technical, right? Then you got to throw in the budget process as well. How you fund programs and things like that, or if there's any relation to a trustee's capital plan. Like, there's so many things to think about, and starting early, that's good advice.
I think I did the budget.
I might need that, so thank you for that.
Save it.
You can go back and listen to every episode that a past master's been on. That question
delete
always
them
gets asked
the minute they are downloaded.
Awesome. Well, it was wonderful having you guys on. I am personally very much so looking forward to this. I think it's something that could be huge and is desperately needed to help. A rising tide raises all boats, and I think a ritual competition can do that for ritual work. So I thank you guys very much for your efforts on this, and I'm excited. So,
well, if you cut a check to us, we will put your name on a trophy. If Time for Fellowship wants to sponsor.
Do we look like we're a podcast that has money? Come on now.
Depends on the price tag. Depends on the price tag. I'm interested.
You
have
guys
our
are
faces
sinking
on it.
money, I'm sure. Burning a hole.
Right.
No, well, thank you guys. Seriously.
Awesome.
Thanks for having us. Seriously.
Thank you guys
it.
for all your hard work on this. Yeah, I'm going to utilize my one swear word per episode that I allot myself. I am very fucking excited. So let's get it. I'm excited to see where this goes. To our listeners, please feel free to follow, like, share, however we do it these days. Do that to get the word out. If you need to email us, you can email us at
timeforfellowship@gmail.com.
And a reminder, on Wednesday nights, usually around 9:30 to 10 p.m., I edit the podcast, and I do it live on Discord. So if you want to come hang out casually with the Brosts and whoever joins us, feel free to join us on our Discord. Link is in the show notes. And, thanks for tuning in.
Have a good one, everyone.
Take care.